our new country moving forward away from the hands of the wicked, which God's been telling us this for a long time. So one of the last things that we talked about last week was you know, from your intel, you had no idea what was going to happen on Tuesday night. And I told you, I had a feeling I knew what it was going to happen because the Lord was telling me, he said there was going to be a groundswell that they were not going to be able to anticipate. And God's been telling us for the last several years that there was going to be a victory and that he was bringing President Trump back into the White House, and it was going to be unprecedented, and it was going to be something that enemies could not stop. And so we saw an historic, unprecedented biblical landslide. We saw the red wave. We saw everything that God said was going to happen. And I did not sleep at all last night because I was seriously so excited just seeing what God was doing and how the prophetic words that he's been giving me, especially recently, were so detailed in that fact. And we saw it come to pass exactly the way that God said it would.
Amen. And, you know, it's not just the United States of America that's celebrating today. It's the whole world. You know, the first couple texts I got after he officially was declared the winner were from Israel and Canada, believe it or not. They were the very first, not anybody from the United States. The 2020 election, I was emailing back and forth and texting certain generals. We had a feeling that was going to go the way it did in 2020. But yesterday was quiet. Everybody that I talked to was very cautiously optimistic. I put some feelers out all last night with some people that are plugged in. They know how the systems work. They know how the machines work. Mike Lindell and others, Professor David Clements, they felt very good as well. And which is amazing is that I believe they tried to cheat. They did cheat. They tried again. They were about ready to pull the trigger in Philadelphia, in Milwaukee, in Detroit, and something stopped them. I was told it was a military presence that stopped them, but I don't believe it was just military presence. I believe it was a host angels that said, "Don't you dare do this," and they stood down.
God said he was going to intervene. And one of the things that he had me share a really strong revelation yesterday, along with the prophetic word that he gave out. But one of the things he said, he was going to intervene and that this was not going to be another 2020 election. And so last night when I was watching, it started getting later, and all of a sudden they weren't calling Georgia. They weren't calling North Carolina. They weren't calling Pennsylvania like they should have. They weren't calling Wisconsin. And I was like, this looks like a repeat of 2020. I'm like, but Lord, you said, no, this was not going to happen. And so we have all been praying that no matter, because God said they were going to try funny things at polling stations. They were going to try funny things with machines. They were going to try all these different types of attacks against the election. He said it was going to do new attacks, old style attacks. They were going to try to attack in every way because they were not going to let it go in the way of President Trump. Yep. But God says, they don't see me coming. And so when you said it was just not just a military presence, it was God's military. I believe it was God's angels, like you said. I believe God stepped in and said, no way, no how, you're not doing this again. Because one of the things that he's also been saying to me over and over and over again in the course of those last couple of years is that he said he allowed 2020 to happen. And he said he was not going to allow it again. The only reason why they were able to pull that off, it wasn't because they were smart, and it wasn't because they had the best, fraudulent election, they ever designed. It was because God allowed it to expose them and to bring them down to this very day and this very hour. They didn't get anything past God, and they sure didn't get anything past God this time either.
Well, they exposed themselves. It was, as we've talked about many times, it was God's perfect plan to have us go through the last 4 years because we wouldn't be awake to what happened. I see people like DC Drano, Steve Bannon has made this clear the last couple of days, especially in Pennsylvania. there seems like this is Steve Bannon talking. There seems like there's 600,000 ballots that just disappeared. Where did they go? 20 million people that voted in 2020 for Joe Biden didn't show up. What happened to those people? Well, they didn't exist. And 2020 is not over. They're going to get to the bottom of this because it needed to happen. But also, DC Drano made a great point this morning that I saw. If President Trump would have won in 2020, not only we wouldn't have woken up, we wouldn't have gotten America together like we have, but he would have had a Democrat House and a Democrat Senate, which would have been very difficult for him to pull things off. Now he has a strong Senate and a House, Supreme Court, a majority. He won the popular vote. That's very big.
Mm-hmm. It's a perfect timing of God. We thought it was the most devastating thing that happened to this nation. It was actually the best thing that happened to this nation, because he said in the prophetic word he gave to me, it was like the 2nd of November, but I actually gave it out this morning. He said, I was drawing them out. Just like I drew out Pharaoh, I drew out Goliath, I drew them out. And now I'm going to destroy them. And so, we're in a better place than we were 4 years ago in so many different ways. And like you said, he would have had a Democratic House, would have a Democratic Senate. They would have impeached him. So he would not been able to do and accomplish all that he was going to do. But I also believe that God had to set him aside to make him realize that this is because of him, not just because of President Trump, that God was going to have to do this. And the nation also had to know this. The nation had to stop looking to just President Trump to save this nation. They really, truly needed to look to God. And like you said, there's been an uniting. There's now Christians that are standing stronger. And just like the other day when I was talking to people and I was given the prophetic word that God had given me, he said, you pull these things down. You stand like the walls of Jericho and you call these things down. You shout at their walls and you make sure they're going to come down. Don't give up. Don't back off. We saw that blue wall come down. We saw it just be decimated before our face. They truly thought they could have at least maybe one, which they got kind of Minnesota. I think Minnesota, if it wasn't for some cheating in Minnesota, I think he would have also had Minnesota. There's going to be a lot of blue states that were actually red that we'll find out here later on. But right now, we're just going to enjoy the celebration of what God is doing and how it's restoring our country. And I want to also get to something that he showed me yesterday morning that he actually said, because of our enemies, we shouldn't be in the position that we were yesterday with being able to have the election that we wanted, with being able to have to be vote for Trump, let alone what we've seen over the middle of the night, which was a Trump victory. And so he gave me this long list of things that the enemy has done since the beginning of this country to stop it from this movement, to stop it from the populist movement, to stop it from, people fighting against them, fighting against the machine. And it went exactly the way God planned it and exactly the opposite of the way the enemies planned it. And I think it was just such a great victory that we have right now. We can't put our guard down. We still have to, we can be celebrating and just keeping our guard up because God said they're not done with the shenanigans before this inauguration day. And he's been warning us that lame duck season, remember what we've been talking about a few different times on here. God obviously knew that President Trump was going to win. That's why he's been warning us about this period, because they were going to try to do things against him and against us before Inauguration Day.
Yeah, they're not done, and we can't say it's over. We have to continue to pray up until he gets in, and when he gets in, there's a lot of work to be done as well. But I'd rather be in this position we are today than him not winning, or they're fighting the election in courts and it's still dragging on, because now at least the world knows unequivocally he won, and he won in a major way. That's important.
It was a landslide, and it was undeniable. And somebody said, I think it was on Fox, it was last night, I think it was early this morning. They said it was the biggest historic political comeback in the world. I mean, you got to think about that for a minute. And then another person said, which I know you're going to like this word because the Lord has been giving it to me a lot, and you know probably what I'm going to say. is they said this was an unprecedented election and election cycle. And that's exactly what God said. And God's been saying that for over 2 years. It would be unprecedented election. It'd be unconventional. And it was the most unconventional, unprecedented election cycle that we've ever seen, with the indictments and with the assassination attempts. And with them, they're all out war against President Trump that failed before their face, and now they can't even come out in the open and say they lost. I mean, they're getting hit really hard with this. And I saw also this morning that they were in total shock. They had no idea that it was going to be a landslide like it was.
Well, I think they're in total shock is because they thought they were going to pull these truckloads of ballots up at the last second. And again, it's a miracle. From what I'm hearing, it's a miracle that they stood down. I mean, there's actual videos and mobile reports on video of 50,000 votes that were about ready to come in on a truck in Philadelphia at something like midnight. Same thing in Milwaukee, same thing in Detroit. But somehow, as the same thing that played out in 2020, they were told to stand down, and they stood down. So ultimately, God is the one that told them to stand down, and they stood down. And I honestly today am surprised. I thought it would take another day or two to get through everything. But, God said expect the unexpected, and I didn't expect that. I didn't expect that he at 12:30 would win and win so convincingly. Even though they cheated, make no mistake, they still cheated. And that's something we have to be very concerned about, because if you look at all the rallies that President Trump, the groundswelling, all the things that he overcame and how America came together for him, for it still to be that close, it shouldn't be that. If there's any other politician that's going to run, there's not going to be another Donald Trump. There's just not. So you got to get the elections fair for anybody in the future, Republican or Democrat.
That's right. They did cheat. They did cheat a lot, and they were trying another 2020. That's why they stopped the counting, and they let it go to the middle of the night when people were going to go to bed and get really excited that President Trump was winning. And so they thought they could do these things in the dark of night, and God stopped it. And that's one of the things, again, that I want to read this to you, because I think it was so powerful that the Lord was giving me. I actually cried when I heard this. This was not a prophetic word. This was just giving us the encouragement yesterday morning about all the things that he has already done to stop our enemies. And it's called We Shouldn't Be Here. We were not supposed to be here where we are today. When the establishment snuck in our nation, designed to change the foundation of this country, to rip apart society and cause a great divide, because they know a house divided against itself cannot stand. They tried to change the history of this nation to cause a hatred for what many thought this nation stood for. They have assassinated presidents and tried with others and failed. They have tried to put this country into countless wars to weaken it militarily and financially. They have allowed spies into our nation and into our government. They allow terrorists into our nation and have allowed them to attack it on all fronts. In 2016, they tried to steal the election, but people overwhelmingly showed up and voted for President Trump. The establishment underestimated the love that people had for this nation and for the freedoms they didn't know God's plan would stop theirs. They tried to scream that he was illegitimate his entire presidency. They tried the Russian hoax and the dossier. The constant lies of the mainstream media attacking President Trump on a daily basis. Their first failed attempt at impeaching President Trump over a phone call. The 2020 election was stolen, and the cover-up they took place, and they hid it, and it continues to this day. January 6th, in their attempt at an insurrection in their narrative, they tried to impeach him the last few days of his presidency. Why? To stop him from being able to run this very day. They tried 4 separate indictments in the latest attempt at another indictment to rephrase some wording to keep him out and to keep him from going. To keep it going. They have tried to remove him from the ballots using the 14th Amendment to spin the real truth of law. They tried to bankrupt him, destroy his reputation and his company. They've gone after his family, and they tried to kill him twice. Well, in this time, we watched God stop our enemies and not let them get what they so desired. We shouldn't be here today voting for President Trump and still standing and fighting for this country. They want us completely devastated and hopeless and completely under their control, and we're not. Instead, we are here because God allowed us to be here. He protected our nation time after time. He protected our nation from death and complete and utter collapse. He spared our President Trump's life to lead this nation to a great victory, and that is why we are here today when we weren't supposed to be. Our enemy's attempts to keep us from this place failed because God did not fail us then, and he will not fail us now. God has been saving our nation continuously right in front of all of our faces. Our nation will live on because our God will make sure of it. Ask yourselves this question. Why would I not trust God now after he's proven to us he's always been here and he's been protecting us from the ones who've tried to destroy us? The enemies have done everything to stop this day, but they couldn't because they couldn't stop our God. This was something that I was crying when he was giving me this revelation of all the things they have done since the beginning of our country to this very day, to stop this very moment, to stop that very election, to stop this movement, to stop God's plan, and they failed. Why? Because God is bigger, God wins, and that's why he was giving this to us yesterday morning, right before the election. And of course, all the polls were opening. Well, some people, I had the polls already open because I started at 6:30 in the morning Central Time. But just think, he was already encouraging his people the same day he was going to do one of the biggest moves politically he has ever done in this nation's history.
Yeah, not just the nation, but this is having ramifications all over the world. Immediately after the announcement of President Trump as the elect, the Houthis backed down in the Middle East. So this already going to start bringing peace to the world because they know he's going to get to the bottom of it. Absolutely amazing. Many prophetic voices had there's going to be a near-death experience. And people are saying, well, where's that near-death experience? We still may have that near-death experience with what happens until he takes office. But something that the Lord showed you in that is so true. Don't forget July 13th. If that shot would have hit what it should have hit, we wouldn't be what we're talking about today. It would be Joe Biden again as the president of the United States of America. That was a miracle. God stepped in, protected him supernaturally. Every shooter that I've ever talked to says you could make that shot with your eyes blindfolded. And they missed. And it only missed because of God. God protected him. Amazing. So that's a near-death experience.
That's why he was showing us that, we shouldn't be here. If it was up to the enemy, we wouldn't be. And our country was at a near-death experience. Because if they would have won, and if they would have been able to steal our country last night with that election, we never would have had a free and fair election again. Our borders would have stayed open. They would have overwhelmed our country. They were bringing our country down for globalism. They were bringing it down for the one world government. And that's the reason why that Israel is under attack the way it is, because these two countries have to go down in order for them to have their global reset, or their great reset, as what they call it. And so you think this is another thing the Lord has been showing me too. And he gave out this prophetic word. I gave out this early this morning, but I actually heard it on the 2nd of November. But he said this victory. Now, again, this is before the election. He said this victory, bringing my David back, was not going to only bring a victory to this country. It was going to destroy the establishment, and it was also going to bring down leaders and governments of other nations. And he said he was going to restore other presidents that have had their election stolen from them. So this is going to affect globally. This is going to affect so many nations. I'm telling you, it's going to affect Canada. It's going to affect Ukraine. It's going to affect China. It's going to affect so many countries. So hold on, because God says everything that's can be shaken will be shaken. We're not done seeing the shaken, but we're not also done with seeing great and mighty victories, because God is bringing down the establishment. He said he's bringing down, I'm going to read this so I'm not like paraphrasing it. because it was so important how he phrased that, of what he was doing. And the reason why these other countries were going to collapse is because they were being funded by the establishment. Mm-hmm. And so he said, let me try to get it because I didn't have this one up here fast enough. Let's see here. I'll find it. But part of it he said was the reason why these other governments were going to collapse is because our establishment had been funding these other governments. And when this establishment is being destroyed, then so will those other governments, because they won't be funded anymore. That's basically, I'm paraphrasing what he said, but that's basically what he's saying. So I will find that part while I'm on here at some point today. I promise I'll bring that back.
Well,
so
as you said that, I got a text yesterday from a Canadian general about October the 7th. What happened to Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel? That attack that brought him into war. My sources told me that there was somebody inside the Israeli government that allowed that to happen. It could have been only one of three people that could allow that to happen, and was Bibi a part of that? Because there's no way Israel was caught off guard. That Canadian general asked me if Benjamin Netanyahu was aware of that, was his generals aware of that? And according to two generals I know that are actually three generals I know that are the right hand of Benjamin Netanyahu, I said, yes, he does. Well, just yesterday, he fired his defense minister, Benjamin Netanyahu did, Gallant. And you can read the tea leaves any way you want, but he would be one of the only three that could allow that to happen. And of all days for that to be exposed was yesterday.
God said that they had infiltrated Israel, and he was going to expose them, and he was going to remove them. And so just like how they had been attacking President Trump, they were attacking Benjamin Netanyahu, and they had traitors in his midst. Yep. So that goes along prophetically with what God has been saying. And so I think with him being removed, like you said, that is a telltale sign of things are going in the right direction in many nations, including the land of Israel, because God is not done protecting them. You watch to see what he does with Hamas and Iran for what they did against Israel, because God's not done judging them, that's for sure.
Exactly. And I asked the generals, the Israeli generals, when this happened, because I was on the board with two of them. And I said, what's going to happen? We're going to get to the bottom of who allowed that to happen. And they said, let's win the war. Let's get that behind us. And when victory is there, we'll expose it. So are they trying to tell us that victory is close with Israel now, that they're exposing it now? Because you wouldn't think this would be the time to expose it, but they did. So I take that as good news, that peace is coming to Israel and to the whole Middle East. Even the Iranian people, we just had a pastor on who was Muslim. He's from Iran. And the issue is not with the Iranian people. The issue is with the Ayatollah, the extremists. The average, everyday Iranian people, they want to be like the Shah and prior to 1979. Iran, and there's hope that Iran can be a democracy someday. They just got to get the Ayatollah out of the way.
Mm-hmm. So I did find that part. It was from the one I thought it was from this morning that I heard on the 2nd of November, and it says, "My children, with bringing the establishment down, it will collapse governments worldwide who are funded by the establishment. This will affect many nations, and it will set my children free no matter where they live. I will bring back presidents of other nations who also had their elections stolen from them. I'm restoring leaders, and I'm restoring my church where it should have been all along." And so that's what he's really important. People have to realize, and I know the whole world, because it's even when we were praying this morning on our prayer call, I saw the whole world celebrate. I could just see it spiritually. The whole world was celebrating with us with Donald Trump's victory, because they know what that means. Our country is a light and a beacon to the rest of the world. And God wasn't saying, and he's been saying this many, many different times, I'm not just saving the United States of America. He said, I'm saving the nations. Now, he is saving our country, and he said, you're going to see that country being saved first, but you're also going to see the rest of the nations be freed from the captivity that they've been in. Our country has been deeply rooted in so many different nations, blackmailing them, funding them, and paying them to do things against our country to try to cripple our country in so many different ways. God also told us that they were keeping the election grid weak, and just so they could use it as a strategy. If we ever raised ourselves up against them, they could use that as a form of weakness to bring down our country. So there's a lot of things our country has funded, and our government has funded with our taxpayer dollars, and God's saying enough is enough.
It is enough. So we have to keep praying up until he takes office in January. I'm told there is a couple trump cards that could be played if they get too aggressive on trying to take him out. So we'll see. We just got to pray for his safety and get in. And then there's a lot of work. But there was another thing that somebody mentioned to me last night was so true. With President Trump winning, this is until 2029, he'll be in office. If he would have won 2020, this would be the last 2 months of his last term.
Yep.
So he'd be coming out. So that's a big deal. We have him to 2029. But the key is don't take too big of a breath. There is a short window for Christians to preach the gospel from east to west to north to south. This 4-year period with him in office is the green light to go and preach the gospel from east to west to north to south before who knows what's going to happen after that.
God is this is a time that he said was for the church, for the body of Christ. He's giving us a time of restoration. He's giving us a time of his pouring out his glory upon all flesh like he's never done it before. He is going to do miracles, signs, and wonders, so he is not denied. He's going to do miracles, signs, and wonders that people will know that he still is the God in the Bible. And so instead of the world being so evil, instead of the world being so dark, God is saying, I'm going to shine my light in this world because he wants to bring more people in the harvest, like the great harvest of souls, than he's ever had before. He cares about so many people. He wants them to stop being blinded. He wants them to stop being under this the propaganda. Somebody just told me this morning that journalism is now. I think that one of them I think it was like Fox News said it. Journalism is basically dead. The mainstream media is dead because this country was actually, with this election, more people were going to independent journalists and independent podcasters than they were the mainstream media. People weren't falling for their lies in the propaganda machine anymore. They lost that control. They will continue to lose that control. And God said he is going to bring the mainstream media completely down. I cannot wait for that day and bring God's media in to bring God's light into the world.
That is so true. I had Fox News up on one TV, just kind of watching out of one eye just to see how they're going to play it, because they're always the slowest to call any state. I mean, again, last night they were the slowest as well. But I watched it on X and was getting texts from multiple people just to keep me up to date. But the mainstream media is over that. They mentioned that on Fox last night. I will give kudos to Sean Hannity, though. I believe Sean came out on Fox News and did something really brave. He came out and said he risked his entire, he kind of joked about it, risk his entire reputation, that he believes that from his sources that Georgia and North Carolina were going to go Trump no matter what. 100% sure, way before anyone else. And putting North Carolina and Georgia in that bucket the way Sean Hannity did, that basically said it's over. And he stuck with it. And you could see the people around him on the panel were like, uh-oh, what do we do now? And it panned out.
And just think about how it's changed Tucker Carlson's view on President Trump. It changed Sean Hannity's view on President Trump. The last 4 years, people have had their eyes open to realize who he truly is. Like he said, I put my career and my reputation on the line because so many people that go up against or go with Trump are going up against the propaganda machine. Yep. Look what happened to Tucker Carlson. He lost his job. At the same time, it was the best thing that ever happened to him. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad that so many people are realizing the truth of what truly happened to him. I bet you if you ask those people now, a lot of people would believe that the last election was stolen. They thought he was insane before. They thought he was just egotistical. He was a sore loser. But you can tell their demeanor has completely changed toward him. And I was watching a guy, I don't know if you ever heard of him, named Benny Johnson. Yeah. And absolutely. I laughed so hard. I was like rolling so hard watching him last night because I was watching Fox and I was watching a Christian broadcast, and then I was watching Benny Johnson as well. And one of the things that happened in the middle of the night was, I think on like 1 or 1:30. Like I said, I lost time, track of time because I was up all night. But Elon Musk tweeted out in the middle, it was like I said, 1:30, game, set, match. And as soon as he did that, even though it hadn't been called yet, the AP was so it was pathetic. So like Benny was doing the decision desk, I think is what he was following, that map. And then the AP, it was usually, the Associated Press is not that bad. They were horrible last night. They were like hours and hours and hours later after the decision desk was making those decisions and calling those races, especially like Georgia and Pennsylvania. Like they just stood out for a long time and people weren't calling it. We're like, why are you not calling it? And when he said game, set, match, and this was before I think Pennsylvania was called. And then he also said that they were sending a whole bunch of, it was helicopters or something, the more Secret Service down to Mar-a-Lago, like in the middle of the night, like right at that particular point, there was a thing saying that they were sending people out to him. Now, I don't know if that was true or not. I don't know what the source was. I don't remember because I was like so tired. But they knew before they called it, there was all these signs, you would say, of a Trump victory. And then they panned over to Kamala and they were all being sent home.
Yeah.
It was it was a telltale sign at like 1:00 in the morning. It was like 1 or 1:30.
Well, that's another key is without social media, without the Benny Johnsons and the Steve Bannons and his glories and all this alternative media that changed everything. We wouldn't have had that situation last night because it would have been trapped. That information. I go back to the about Fox News calling Arizona. They controlled the process in 2024. They didn't. I remember RFK Jr. Him and I were together in California with General Flynn for the Reawaken, and we were in the green room. And he said, this next election, meaning the one we just coming up to, he said it's going to be decided with podcast. Alternative media is going to decide this. And that was groundbreaking for him to say that at that time. And he was absolutely right, because it did. Without Twitter being influenced. Remember last time Twitter was hijacked. President Trump was kicked off. You couldn't say anything about voter fraud. And that is another thing you got to give President Trump's team kudos for, is they had lawyers on the ground. They attacked quickly when they heard that there was problems in voting, and they thwarted it. Again, if they wouldn't have had control of social media, they wouldn't have been able to pull that off. And they did. It was amazing. And the other one I think was brilliant is voting early. That put them in a box that they could never catch up from.
Exactly. They did so many great things. When they got rid of the last RNC chairwoman, whatever her name was, Rhonda. She was a rhino. Yep. And getting rid of her was getting rid of a snake, because she was a snake. She was there to make sure that he did not get that election. She wanted to make sure that he lost. She's part of the swamp. And so by removing her and putting in Laura and putting in, I can't remember the other guy's name, it just changed everything. Like you said, they got so many first time people who have never voted before. They got them out. They got them excited. They got so many people out to early vote. They were ahead of the game. And yep. I was watching, it was like 8 or 9 o'clock, where there were shenanigans already in Milwaukee, where they were messing with the tabulation machines, where they had things on there to show that like a stripe or protection on it to show if it was like messed with or not. And those seals were broken at like 2 or 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, whatever. And so some of the ballots had to be recounted. And then all of a sudden they were messing around with God said all these things. He said they were going to mess around with the machines. They were going to mess around with the polling places. They were going to stream terrorist attacks. They were going to try to stop them. We had gas leaks. We had terror attacks. We had potential bomb threats. You had things in Washington, D.C. where a guy put gasoline all over himself, and he was going to douse himself with, was going to set himself on fire. And then you had the shenanigans they were doing with the ballots, where I never heard of this before. It's like right before the election, where they were putting tiny little dots in Kamala's box. And that tiny little dot could send those ballots to an arbitrator. And that person can determine, without being watched, if they didn't have a poll watcher, because in 2020, there's a ton of those ballots that were kicked to the arbitrators. They were just doing whatever they wanted when they wanted it,
right,
and saying, well, this was my opinion. And so this is the kind of things were going on, and it didn't work. Why? Because God didn't allow it to work. And when he's been saying over and over and over again that he was going to save this nation in a day, and he reminded me to tell the people the other day, I think it was Monday or Tuesday morning, and he said he saved the nation in a day on July 13th.
Yes,
He's also going to save the nation in a day with this election. And he did just that. And he's been saving our nation time and time again. God did not forsake this nation. We were forsaking God. We were turning our backs away from God. This nation was. But God never turned his back on us. And he was waiting for us to turn back to him. And he kept using the scriptures about him being over the nations, about hearing the cries of his people. He would deliver us out of it all. He kept giving us scriptures about cutting the enemies off, and about he brings down kings and he can lift up ones and bring up others. So there was so many different scriptures that he was showing and proving, because the churches, there's so many evangelicals that didn't go out and vote. The last time it was like 40 million, is because the pastors weren't telling the people how important it is for the Christians and evangelicals to not only pray over our elections, to pray over our leaders, to make sure God was in our government. They weren't talking about it at all. So people thought that Christians were supposed to stay out of politics, was instead they're supposed to be the ones in charge. And so we've seen a massive groundswell that God said of people, the blinders were being removed, and they're going to start fighting that good fight of faith. And I know people, when they saw stopping last night, including myself, when we saw that kind of funny business happen like it did in 2020, people stopped and they just started warring and praying and calling it down. They weren't sitting there going, oh my gosh, and getting into fear. This is another repeat of 2020, because they kept hearing the words of God. And God said, don't allow it to happen. You call it down. You have more power and authority than you realize. Use my name, use my word, call it down like the walls of Jericho. He kept using that example, kept using David and Goliath. And so people, their faith was they had a high expectation that God was with us, and he showed up and he showed off, and it was amazing. And we can celebrate, but we still have to keep our guard up.
We do. God has it. This next few days is going to be crucial up until he gets put in there. It's going to be interesting to see who he puts in his cabinet now, because I truly believe RFK Jr. and Elon Musk, they're going to do what President Trump wants them to do and start cutting and going after and naming names. If you're on the Epstein list, if you're on the P. Diddy list, you're in deep trouble. If you're in a bloated government, you're in deep trouble, because Elon Musk is going to come in and cut that. If you're a pharmaceutical company, anybody that's done anything against the vaccines, malicious, killing people, your time is up. Tick tock, because it's coming. Amazing times we live in.
We're living in the times where this is glory days, and we're going to live in times where God wins, and we're going to see it more and more all the time.
Some people are not breathing very well at all because they're wondering what's next. And the thing is, we don't want revenge on them. We pray that they repent. Also, anybody that's involved in any of the January 6th, I just got a report 2 days ago. The whole truth about January 6th is coming out. There's video evidence. There's proof. You're going to see that turnabout. You can get the movie The War on Truth. All that's going to come out probably in the next 30 to 45 days. A blockbuster on who's really behind it. And as what we've been saying for a long time, January 6th was a cover-up of the stolen 2020 election. And that whole house of cards in January 6th is coming down.
Okay, I have the prophetic word for you. Now, I've been talking about the architect and the blueprints, and you know that because we've been talking about this for years. This is why This day is so exciting because it's just like a dam has broken. And it's just like it's a flood of stuff going to be going in the right direction. Now, again, I know we're going to see things that we're not going to like,
Right.
obviously, because they're not, enemies are not going without a fight. That's for sure. But this is something that you just talked about. But I want to give this to you. He gave me it to give out this morning. I heard in a second. The architects of the election fraud are about to be exposed and brought to nothing in front of the world. I will bring out and expose the January 6th architects, the indictment architects, the assassination architects, and everyone who has tried to impeach my David, everyone who has tried to steal this nation and continue to control it. I brought out Pharaoh from where he was to totally humiliate and annihilate him, and I will do the same on a bigger scale this time. I drew out Goliath among his army to fight alone. Everyone who has come up against my children has lost, and theirs is no different. And so then he talked about the bringing down the establishment and collapsing the other governments that are funded by the establishment. So as soon as you talked about January 6th has all come out, we were actually just praying regarding the January 6ers and the prisoners right now, because they're still in there and they've been held. They held out bail. They've been held without trial. They've been treated so horribly and so poorly. And so we were praying for their vindication. We were praying for their justice. We were praying for them to be completely set free out of there and completely restored out of the time that they had lost, out of the finances they had lost, whatever's been done to them, that God would restore them. And I know with President Trump and exposing January 6th, that means every single one of those who are left inside of that jail are going to be set free. And this is more prophecy being fulfilled, where God said he was going to expose the architects and he was going to expose the blueprints. And he said he has a computer and he says he has a proof for it and he was going to show it all. So that is so prophetically what God's been saying.
Well, take it a step further. I didn't say this to you. That information I got about the videos coming forward, I believe the exact words was I don't know if they use architect, but the person who designed it and schemed it is going to be revealed. And we already know who she is, but it's coming out. And she's the same one today that I saw a video this morning, and she said she started out a press conference or something, and it's not a good morning. I'm not going to say good morning because it's not a good morning. She's not happy. And I don't know.
I think that's a person that somebody has her laptop. I'm pretty sure that somebody's got some stuff on her from.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yep. The person that we've been talking about for a long time. We've been talking about this laptop. We've been talking about the blueprints. We've been talking about the videos and the audio. We've been talking about the emails. We've been talking about the phone calls. We've been talking about all this stuff for years. This is why it is so awesome, because so much justice is going to be served and so much judgment is going to come down. It is going to be the most amazing time in this country to be alive. That's why I said they're like caged animals, because they know, like they've been spewing out all this stuff. He's going to incarcerate us. He is going to throw us in prison. He's going to try us for treason. Why are you saying that? Unless you know that you did something wrong for you to be incarcerated and for you to be tried for treason. That's called, let's see here, a coup. And you're the one who's designed the insurrection. You're the one who's tried to impeach President Trump twice. You've tried to kill him. You've tried to destroy his life. You've tried to bankrupt him in every way. So yeah, I think that this is a time for justice, and they know it's coming.
Oh, they know it's coming. I mentioned to you in the break that General McInerney was on with me yesterday, and General Valley. And in the course of that, he brought up Hammer and Scorecard. I told you in the break that there was a court hearing like 2 weeks ago. He said, I never heard about the Hammer and Scorecard. General McInerney was the very first person I knew. First, the Lord gave that to me in January of 2017. One of the 17 scandals, number 10, Hammer. And all these are coming true, and that's part of Scorecard. But he also said something unique, and I watched the reaction of General McInerney and General Valley when General McInerney said something, and I think he thought I would just let it go, and I jumped back on it. He brought up Gitmo. And I could see that he passed it quickly, and sometimes generals like to say something and just kind of go on to the next thing. But I said, Gitmo. I said, watch Gitmo, because it's going to be a packed place. And they both had grins from ear to ear. They know that place is going to be packed. It's coming.
God has been God's been talking about Guantanamo. God's been talking about tribunals. And one of our mutual friends, I was actually at one of the events that we go together. And this person actually said, I don't think he meant to say this word, but he said tribunal, that he was in a tribunal court. And I just kind of sat there for a second. I'm like, I wonder if you actually meant to say, I didn't say anything to him. So I was like, okay, I caught the word. But God has been using that word. And so when he said that, I was stunned. And I just kind of stepped back from it. I was like, oh my gosh, did he really say that? He wasn't saying exactly what was going on. He just said he was in front of a tribunal judge. And I was just like, my team and I, we kind of looked at each other like, did he just say that? Like, did he just say that? Because God has been talking about tribunals and talking about treason. He's been talking about Guantanamo Bay. And he's been talking about how we're going to start seeing all of this stuff that's already happened that we didn't know about, because there's things been happening behind the scenes, but also we're going to start seeing things out in the open. So we're going to see what's already had happened and things that are going to happen here in the very, very near future.
I love watching people's facial expressions. Something new pops upon them. I go back with you personally 2 times that I just go back and I laugh about to this day. The time that that you came on and you were talking about servers. And then just so happens, and God doesn't work in happenstances, you were here on the ranch when the guy that has the servers, yep. You were right in front of him. He showed you where the servers are. And then again, I'll never forget the Summit 2.0 with the generals, that you got a little military intel to see the prophetic match the real stuff. And you're like a kid in a candy store.
I was. And then today, I'm like the same way. I think a lot of times when I'm on this show, it's almost like Christmas every time, because I don't know. It's like unwrapping this gift every single time of the intel that God has been giving me. Because I remember one of the first times I was on here, I think you said there was a general reached out to you, said, where is she getting her intel from? Yeah. And it was like, I'm getting my intel from God. I'm not a spy or anything like that. I'm literally getting that intel from God, because that was such confirmation to me. And it's been a confirmation to me every single time, because sometimes you're out here and you are, you're blacklisted by a lot of people. You are, kept away from other people because they think that you're crazy, and they think, you're just this person that, is a false prophet and whatever. And so they blacklist you basically. And so you feel like you're out here by yourself, and you some of these prophecies that I'm hearing I don't understand some of them, because they're not coming from me. So I don't understand all the things that I'm hearing and seeing. And then when I come on here, and they seem so outlandish, but I come on here and then I hear these confirmations, and it's like, God's just showing to me every single time, Julie, I told you I was talking to you. These are the things that I'm giving to you that only I would know, because obviously I'm not going to know these things, but God knows these things. And that's why I love being on here. I know everyone loves us being together on this show, because in this last 3 years that I've been on here, it has been confirmation after confirmation every week. It has been so fun to do this show. And I know it's going to continue on, because there's a lot of things that God's going to unravel. And God said, get out your popcorn, because we're not done with the victories.
Yeah, again, I go back to this, and I saw it again yesterday with General McInerney and General Valley on with me just on the day of the election. And, we go back 4 years ago. I've known these generals a long time, and all the generals that I know, none of them gave God the credit in the beginning. It was like, we're going to get this back, and military this, military that. And, I don't blame them. They're generals. It's hard to be a general. You got to respect that. But their transformation in the Lord has been unbelievable. General McInerney, you thought would have been a pastor yesterday instead of me. He's saying, I know the good Lord's going to step in. I don't know how he's going to do it. It looks bleak, but the good Lord's going to step in, and he's going to save this country. And he did. I was on Republic last night with Colonel Douglas McGregor, and I never met Colonel Douglas McGregor before. And I was on with Dr. Jerome Corsi, and we were talking about light. We were talking about this is a spiritual battle. This is not politics. This is good versus evil. And you could see his whole demeanor change. And he pulled me aside and asked me more questions about the spiritual part of this. And you're like, this guy's a colonel. This guy's a general. That they're getting it, that it's God that's going to save America for such a time as this. And that's, to me, one of the greatest gifts. And even Israeli generals, I've said this many times. In the beginning, Israeli generals like, yeah, we're fighters. We'll win this. But now they're all turning to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, too. And some of them are very close to becoming believers in Yeshua, the Messiah. It's amazing.
That's the reason why this all had to happen, because it had to get out of our hands and we had to give it to God's. We had to be in such an impossible situation and so far back, or, outnumbered or outgunned by the enemy, for us to really say, God, it's too big for us. It's like in 2 Chronicles 20, when Jehoshaphat put out a fast because there was a great military army that was coming against them, and he knew it was bigger than them. And so what he did is he went to God and he said, look, Lord, you're the one who has your hand. No foe can withstand. And so they were praising and worshiping God. And as they were doing that, God set up ambushes, and then they didn't have to lift a finger to fight in that battle. And so God's been saying the same thing. The battle is his. The battle is the Lord's. We just had to entrust him with it. And something that not only that I am hearing these generals and seeing even like General Flynn and other people and seeing their faith grow in God over the past couple of years, but also President Trump. He said something last night that I had to take a picture of. It was during his speech. And he said, many people have told me that God spared my life for a reason. And that reason was to save our country and to restore America to greatness, Trump said. And now we are going to fulfill that mission together. He continued, the task before us will not be easy, but I will bring every ounce of energy, spirit, and fighting that I have in my soul to the job that you've entrusted me. So God has been revealing himself also, not only to the generals, but to President Trump. And that's who President Trump really needed to see, that it was God.
Yep.
And him sparing his life, not only once, but twice, that we know of. We know there's more. But there were so many times that this could have stopped. That's why God said, we shouldn't be here. If it was up to the enemies, we shouldn't have. He wouldn't have been here. And I know he's going to start revealing himself more to President Trump the closer he gets to Inauguration Day. I believe that God is going to reveal himself so much more to President Trump and reveal to him why he calls him David. This is so specific. He now knows that he's chosen and called by God. He's been protected by God, but he has to know why he is called David. And once he knows that is going to be such a spiritual awakening for him. He is going to go back into that presidency, a changed man, complete changed man. And I've seen it. I'm so excited that everyone else is going to be able to see that. What God's going to do with him. He's going to do a lot of things spiritually with President Trump.
To confirm what you just said, this is from a general about 20 minutes ago on my phone while we're on. It said, it is clear that President Trump has been given the key of David by the Lord, as discussed in Revelations 3:7 and Isaiah 22:22.
Okay, hold on there. I just had a prophecy, and I got to figure out if it was yesterday or today's. God said that, and here it is. I knew I was going to, he always helps me when I have so much stuff up here. He always helps me find it. He says, don't you see I am that I am? This is from November 3rd. I am the same in my word as I am now. This nation and my children around the world, I will not fail you. So do not fear what you are about to hear. Do not believe in your enemy's threats against your election being certified. Don't listen to the words of them trying to throw my David in prison and throwing away the key. There is a key that will be used, and it will not be your enemies. So as soon as you said key, and the general just talked about a key, I'm like, God just mentioned that key specifically yesterday. And so this is why I just love it, because he's confirming with so many different people the spiritual aspect of it and the natural aspect of it. And this is why it's so fun to see what God does. Even in the midst of such devastation, sometimes we can see such a light and such an awesome power of God.
Well, again, you got to give God all the glory, because there's this, there. I don't listen to your prophetic words. I don't have time, and the general probably didn't either. It's just God putting in the right time and the perfect places together. And I have no idea what you're about to say. You have no idea what I know or don't know or think I know or should know. Sometimes I should know things and I don't. Like the Taiwan, I got scolded by many generals. Yeah. How do you not know what's going on in Taiwan? Like, okay, I do now. Yeah, it's funny.
When you said key, I was like, wow, that's not a coincidence. Mm-mm. That's called confirmation. And that's why even like my team, they all watch the prophets and stuff. I can't watch them, obviously, for very specific reasons. But they say all of the prophets, the true prophets, are aligning. Their words are aligning. There's so much confirmation out there. And when we're on here all the time, there is so much confirmation with the governmental intel, the military, intel, whatever. And so we're seeing that God is doing so many things for us. But I also want to read something out of this prophetic word as well, because this prophetic word is called, "This nation will not stay in the hands of the establishment." This was given out yesterday morning before this victory. He was telling us about a victory. He says, "I promise to bring you a victory, and it doesn't matter what your enemies are up to. It doesn't matter what they throw at you. None of it's bigger than me. Do not be surprised when things appear worse after election day of your enemy's chaos and attacks against you. They will lose as they always do. Haven't I proven to you that now that I am protecting this nation from the hands of the wicked? Have you not heard the prophetic words I've given before it took place? I'm the deliverer. I am the one who saves this nation from the evil that Satan uses to destroy them. This is my nation, and the machine that's against it will be torn apart by my hand, and it will not recover." Now, there's also that he said something in the beginning of this. The first paragraph, he said, "Oh, my United States, why do you fear what your enemies can do? Why do you fear they could steal another election and stay in control over this nation? My children, don't you trust that I am the Most High God? Don't you trust me when I said I have defeated the enemy? Do you not trust my words that I have given, that you are more than conquerors, that I have made you stronger than your oppressors? Because I have. Don't you see the fear and the lies your enemies are using to gain power over you and your nation? This nation will not stay in the hands of the establishment. They are about to unleash things against you that will bring much discouragement and confusion, wondering, is there going to be an all-out civil war?
Yeah.
They will try to crowd your streets and protest and violence. They will deny the election results and scream their so-called democracy, when all they care about is their control and their precious establishment. Your enemies and their plans are a joke. When they fill your streets, when you fill your houses and your neighborhoods with praise, praise me louder as much as you can. When you see how fast your enemies completely will fall from power." So God was telling us, again, right before this victory, he was encouraging us, I am going to protect you. Your enemies are not going to steal this election because I allowed it before, but I'm not going to allow it again. Mm-hmm. And we saw it. And that's why it's so... I was laughing so hard last night, my stomach muscles were hurting. I was like in tears at the same time because seeing the goodness of God, we just saw it over and over. He's been giving us scriptures for this very thing. And we saw him move so mightily. It was so amazing. But he's been warning us they're going to try to pull out more stuff.
They are.
Selection.
And you go back to last night again, it's truly a miracle. If you would have asked me again before the election, I was asked by many people, did I think he would win the same night? No, nobody. I don't think anybody I know thought that it would come back that quickly. It's because God had him roped off at every turn. And that key moment, I'd like to get to the bottom of what happened. Was it special forces that did this? Was it God's special forces? Was it a combination of both? But how did that go down that they stood down at that crucial moment and then the house of cards fell and it came crumbling down? Because he had them so many different ways that they couldn't win. And they finally said, all right, it's over. To the next round.
And this is the one I actually heard the day before. It was November 2nd. I gave it out this morning. I was going to give it out yesterday morning. because the first paragraph says, I will have the last laugh, and you will see the defeat of your enemies. They're trying everything in their war chest they have to throw at you. At my David and at this nation, your enemies are running out of strategies they can cook up against you. I have told you before, I cut their lines of communication, and the division has grown so deep between them, they are on the verge of total collapse. Now, before I go on to read any more about, he's been warning us about all the things that they were going to do. Well, last night, at some point, they even said that there was some tabulation machines that were connected to the internet. Yeah. They were talking about this. They stopped it. And so that to me was God saying, I told you I was going to cut their line of communication off. They couldn't get to the servers. They couldn't get to those machines the way they could have in 2020. He had people not only spiritually there, I think he, like you said, like he had angels there, but I also believe that he had the infiltrators there. He had people that he needed there for those specific places. God knew exactly where they were going to put out all those stops. He already knew it. And so he put people in those specific places. I was told that the Trump administration or the Trump campaign, they had people in this area, like in the Milwaukee area. They had even Christians I know that were over there, and they were in the poll places and stuff. They were there seeing all the stuff take place, and they were stopping it. It was amazing to see all the ways that were stopped last night. So yes, it was a miracle that God said he was going to have his way with that landslide, and he did.
So going back to that lines of communication, what did the Lord say specifically? Because that triggered something in my mind that a certain somebody told me. I got to be careful how I say this. I believe he says we have captured their ways of communicating. This was before the election.
So he's been saying, I have cut their lines of communication. He's been saying this for at least 6 months or more. Because one of the things that he was giving that example as a Tower of Babel, he cut their lines of communication and he confused their speech, and that's why they could not complete that tower against him. It was that Babylon. It was that system without God. They were not able to complete it because God cut the lines of communication. Well, he said, I'm cutting the lines of the communication again with the enemies, and they will not be able to perform their plot, plans, and schemes, and what they wanted before. They could not do it again. I am intervening, and I'm cutting them off. I'm confusing their lines of communication, and they will not be able to communicate with each other the way they used to. That's what he was saying. And of course, with this great divide with them, their power struggle is also real. So there's a lot of confusion in the ranks of the enemy, and that's what also happened in the Tower of Babel. There was confusion, and that's how it stopped their communication. So God's been saying that for a while now.
Well, they did. They stopped it. We mentioned this on I think a year ago or 2 years ago. One of the ways they were communicating was Project Mockingbird, where they were going into a Google Gmail, keeping the message in a draft, and then all of mainstream media would go into that draft, which wouldn't go on the internet, so it couldn't be captured. They get their talking points, and then they would delete it. I was told, that's the reason I asked that question, I was told probably about a month ago by somebody that they captured their lines of communication. Not that, something different, the way they were communicating, they figured out how they're communicating. So, wow. Interesting.
Yeah, that's God, though. That's how God works. And it's amazing because he's been giving me these prophecies for a long time before, obviously, you heard about it. And before I knew and understood anything that was going on besides what God is telling me. I only know what God is telling me. And so when I hear things like that, it just makes me chuckle. And he just reminds me, because sometimes I'm just like, did I hear you right? Is that you? You know, because some of these things are so like, is this right? Because I never want to ever give out a prophetic word if it's not truly from God and if it's not truly from him. But I know his voice. I've sat with him many times before, hearing him. I always take a journal. I always have my notebook and my pen, and I'm always waiting and listening, and I'm waiting for his voice. And I know when he's speaking, and when he starts talking things like this, I know it cannot be me. I cannot be making these things up. But it's so nice to know, because you have so many people that have come out with persecution against me, and And then you have to say, okay, well, if so many people are coming out against me, then maybe I am wrong. And so then I go back into my prayer closet and I say, okay, Lord, did I miss it somewhere? Do I need to correct myself? Do I need to go out and make an apology to the people? What do you want me to say? What do you want me to do? I'm always that person that if I need to be corrected, I will be corrected. And to know that there's so many of these different prophetic words I hear so often that they're being confirmed all the time or being proven all the time. It's so amazing that it's God. It's not me. And that's why I want to tell people. It was like, Julie, your prophetic words. No, they're not mine.
Right.
They're God's words.
Yep.
They're his words. He's just given them to me to give out to the people.
And he'll give them to you too, if you seek his face with all your heart and guide it. That's the other thing people have to, prophecies. Who knows if God means that going to be 10 minutes from now, or 10 days from now, or 10 years, for 1,000 years from now. We've gotten to a society in America that we just want things so quickly. We want a prophetic word before lunch. Get that prophetic word to be done. Oh, it didn't happen, so they're a false prophet. Can you imagine Isaiah and Ezekiel and Jeremiah today, what they'd have to go through? I mean, they had it rough back then, but today's society, like, your prophecy didn't come true. It's been 10 minutes.
Yeah. Or it looked like, I use this example all the time because we just get email after email after email about the King Charles thing when God says he wasn't going to get the crown. And then when I went into my prayer closet, I actually went and spent several days with him on a prayer retreat. And I said, Lord, I will go out there. I will apologize. And he said, apologize for what? And I said, well, he was, he had a coronation. He was crowned. And he said, you can have a fake coronation as you can have a fake inauguration. He said, you can have a fake king at the same time you can have a fake president. And I said, okay. And he's like, he didn't get the real one. And so just because people don't understand what's really truly going on doesn't mean that the prophecy is wrong. Right. It just means that we put the wrong interpretation on it. And so all these things, they haven't all been revealed yet. We're going to start seeing, God said he was going to expose the royal family. He said he was going to expose what's going on in Great Britain and Europe. And so no matter what it looks like right now, it's going to be exposed. He's going to reveal it all. When he talked about the Biden, well, it looks like the Biden is well, people who have common sense know that's not the real person because he can't be 6 inches taller than he was, a couple months ago. So it's more and more obvious that they're using worse people to replace him with. But that was also outlandish, because people don't understand. How would people use a mask, and people wouldn't do that. And that's the real him. No, it's not. People don't understand what the enemies are capable of and the drastic measures they will take out of desperation. And another thing, he mentioned about a coffin again in the White House. I just want to let you know that because we talked about skeletons that were going to be exposed, skeletons in the closet, but he mentions a coffin in the White House. This is not the second or third time he's mentioned this to me over the last probably 2 or 3 years, but he mentioned it again. And he talked about skeletons in the people's closets that were going to be exposed. And he said that he was going to expose what has been hidden behind those walls of the White House.
I think I've said this before. I've been told that there are literally skeletons in the closet of the White House, literal bodies. Mm-hmm. Rose Garden, inside the White House, but also in the Rose Garden. I think there was a movie about roses coming up in a rose garden with dead bodies in there. Well, I'm told that there are dead bodies in the Rose Garden as well. So, did you see, speaking of that kind of rings a bell, that they put fences up around the White House, but they're excavating underneath and they're showing below the White House where all these things are below the White House. I saw that video and a picture of that like 3 days ago. I knew that there was tunnels and stuff under the White House, but there was excavation in front of one of the sides and it showed underneath the White House that they were excavating. So that's curious that they're doing that now. I just saw that 2 days ago. I saw
that they had all the fencing up. I saw that they also were boarding up most of D.C., actually. I'm still trying to figure out why they were boarding it up because, Trump people, Washington is made of, 90% Democrat. So I'm kind of confused on why they would board things up unless they were trying to do something themselves, which it hadn't happened yet. I don't know. But I did not know about the excavation right in front or right around the White House. That's interesting to me.
Yep.
That's interesting. I don't know. They're hiding stuff under that White House because God even said they were.
They are. Yep. No question. Yep.
Oh, we just got an update. The AP has finally called Michigan for President Trump. So as of right now, he stands at 292. They have still not called Arizona, or I don't think they've called Nevada yet.
And that's another, just praise the Lord. Can you imagine if this would have come down to Michigan, Arizona, and Nevada? We would still be not knowing, and things would have been even delayed even more. But God trumped them, no question about it. And President Trump won over 5 million so far, and it's higher than that. 5 million in the overall vote. Wow.
That's what I think shocked me too. I just put a smile on my face because I knew he was going to win the electoral vote, because I know he would win that. If it wasn't for cheating, he'd win by a landslide with also the popular vote. And I knew that because you can see with, they had to pay people to go to her rallies. And they had to bus people in from all these different states to make it look bigger than it actually was. She had to pay and lie to people about concerts when they weren't actually going to get one, like the whole Beyonce thing that blew up in her face. Yeah. When people thought they were going to get a free concert, and then she just got up and just endorsed her and then got off, and so people booed and then left. People are angry, so you knew he was gonna, he normally, without cheating, he would have won the electoral college vote, but the popular vote, and having him win it by so much, it was so like God was saying, they didn't get the House, they didn't get the Senate, they didn't get the popular vote, they didn't get the electoral college, they got nothing that they were after. And that's when God was saying it was going to be so unprecedented that people were going to be in awe, shock. What he's been telling us, shock and awe. What he's been telling us, biblical. What he's been telling us, unconventional, unusual, unprecedented. He's been telling us all these things to prepare us for this. And one of the things that I knew when I was praying the other day, he said no delay. Now, I was like, okay, no delay of what? So, I didn't come out and say it, to a lot of people because I didn't know for sure. Because I'm like, okay, I thought maybe like you. I really thought last night we could have gotten something. We should have. If they would have done it right, we could have had something by 10:30, 11 o'clock, and it would have been over. Yep. But they always love to stop and drag it out, because that's when they start doing their funny business at after 10 o'clock. So I think when in 2020 they stopped at 10:30, and that's when Biden came out and said something, and then all of a sudden everything stopped. And that's what, no one came out this time except for Kamala's person. He came out, but I think that was later on, and he said that she had left.
Can you imagine that? She left. She couldn't even go out and just say thank you for everything. She left. She probably 3 sheets to the wind, like Hillary Clinton was in 2016, that she couldn't walk. That would be my guess. But she's supposed to come out at 4 o'clock today, Eastern time, to do her concession speech. But another thing that just triggered my thought process last night when I was half listening to Fox News, the person that Fox News had on the ground at Kamala's headquarters kept saying there was bad communication. They would ask somebody at Kamala headquarters, which she was at. They couldn't get an answer, and they said every time we'd get asked for a question, they'd have to go to Delaware to get the answer. That was Joe Biden's stomping ground, which didn't make any sense. All communication was coming from Delaware, not Kamala's headquarters. So the lines.
No, because he wasn't even there. He was at the White House. He was not invited to our watch party, which I think is hilarious. It just shows how much they despise each other, which God said they were. There was definitely a great divide between the two of them. So we started seeing that come to pass more and more when he kept coming out and saying stupid, idiotic things to actually destroy the end part of her. I mean, he did not help her campaign at all. But remember what God has been saying, that he was their tongues would be their worst enemy.
Yep.
Her tongue was her worst enemy. Biden's son was sure his worst enemy. And then you had Bill Clinton come out and he said something that was really bad for her campaign. You had Obama come out that was really bad for her campaign. You had Michelle come out with really bad for her campaign. And like, no one was helping her. They were actually making it worse than they were actually, they were getting all these people riled and mad because they were condemning them. And so God said their tongue will be the worst enemy, and we saw it.
Yep.
Time and time and time. It was absolutely hilarious. I thought it was comical.
And then you had Mark Cuban coming out and saying that President Trump doesn't have any intelligent women that are in his camp. That went viral all over the place. So much that Kamala's team came out and told Mark Cuban, stop stumping for us. We don't want you talking for us anymore, because that backfired.
They say the stupidest things, and then they think like Biden. Excuse me, I might tickle my throat with that. Biden with the garbage thing. Yeah. Do you think by calling us Nazis and by calling us garbage, that somehow, some way, that's going to get more people who are independent? Like it was CNN came out last night, or MSNBC, whatever it was, and I started laughing because they're like, we're seeing a 20% shift in independent voters going to Trump. And their faces just was like, it was so funny because they were not prepared for it. But that's what God said. This was going to blindside them. The groundswell of people, of Democrats that were actually going to vote Republican, the independent, and then the people who have never voted before. They weren't prepared. They were not, just like with Hillary Clinton, they were blindsided.
Yep.
They underestimated the people. And when they tried to vote, or they tried to steal a vote, they got caught. Because God, again, said he was going to deliver our country. And we saw it. It was a miracle. This was not just like a normal election where, okay, great, everything went as planned. No, the enemy tried to steal it. And God had to intervene in all these different states, in all these different ways, in all these different pathways. They could have stolen it, and it didn't work. God did it. It was, like you said, it was a miracle because God didn't want anybody to get the glory for this. It could only be by God. And I truly believe that so many people around the country and all over the world saw that was a biblical night. Saw that only could have been God's hand that moved in this country to bring about the victory as fast, even though it was still late in the night and a lot of us haven't gotten sleep because of it. But because I wanted to see it, I had to see it. I had to see that Trump wins, Trump is elected. I wanted to see it in the time that, as I missed it, the first in 2016, because I had fallen asleep. And I wanted to be awake for it. We could have gotten it sooner, but it doesn't matter. We still got it sooner than the enemies wanted because they never wanted it to happen. So we're celebrating now because of God, that's for sure.
Yeah, you go back to July 13th. They thought they had him. They thought they had it in the bag. They thought they were going to eliminate him. You look at all the things that President Trump has gone through, all the persecution, the false trials, the judges. They're still not done. November 24th, we got to pray into that. That's when the judge is supposed to come back with a sentence. I just had an attorney on, I think yesterday, about that, and they anticipate they're going to try to put him in jail on the 24th. And we have to pray for intercession on that. They're not going to quit.
Can they? I mean, God said they're not going to get what they wanted, but legally, so I know God is going to step in just like he did with this election. But can they do that with a person who's already been elected president?
Yeah, they can. Yeah, they can.
Wow.
It would create a crisis. Even so much. Who was telling me this? I don't know if the attorney was telling me this or a general was telling me this. I can't remember who told me this yesterday. Might have been one of the General McInerney or General Valley, that they recommend that he stayed in Florida and made Florida the White House and have Governor DeSantis protect him so that he doesn't go into any of these traps. Because if you go outside into a rogue state, they could get you. They could get you in New York. They could get you in Washington, D.C. So we got to pray this through. That's November 24th, and nobody's talking about that right now.
God said they were going to try to put him in jail. and he said they will fail. And just like he said, they were going to try to steal the election, and they failed. And so this is where all the prayer warriors, all of his glory, all of his glory nation, everyone who's watching, you need to start praying this criminal activity down from the side of the establishment. We need to call it down, just like we called down the election fraud. We called down every attack. We've been praying for President Trump's protection on his life. And now we have to pray for the certification of this election. And we also have to pray for God intervening, for them not being able to throw him in jail. We have the power to do it. We have the power of the name of Jesus. We have the power. We've seen God save us time and time again. We cannot doubt that he is not going to do it now. We cannot fear what they can or cannot do. We know these indictments are going to collapse. God said they were going to collapse because God said they were all fake and that they would not be able to stand. And so I think God also said that President Trump has some Trump cards. So I have a feeling that if something were to come in that way, God was going to make sure he was going to be able to use that card at the right time. But he had to use it with his power and not just President Trump's. He had to use it with God. So hold on, because they're going to start trying things. But don't give up. Put your guard up. Keep holding that line. Do not ever surrender, and definitely do not give in to their narrative of what they are going to threaten. God said again, prophetic words. This is what they were going to do. They were going to try not to certify the election. They were going to try to throw him in jail. It will fail, and that's what we're going to just have to keep declaring and declaring.
Yeah, and as the generals warned yesterday, they just talked to Sheriff Mack. Sheriff Mack was in a briefing with FBI Director Christopher Wray. If you're a sheriff somewhere in the country, you have the ability under the Constitution to deputize people. They were concerned about civil wars breaking out all over the United States to disrupt them from taking office. This is where the animal is wounded, and they're going to do anything and everything. So,
không gian trong thập đại thiết tác. Trong thập đại thiết tắc còn có một loại không gian sao? Cho tới bây giờ chính mình cũng chỉ biết có âm dương. Luân hồi, hiện tại xem ra còn có thêm một không gian nữa. Thái sử không thản nhiên nói, cái gọi là thập đại thiết tắc căn bản là 10 loại lực lượng cơ bản nhất của sinh linh và không phải sinh linh giữa thiên địa. Không gian chính là một trong số đó. Lục Nguyên bất giác hỏi, thập đại thiết tắc là thập đại thiết tắc nào? Hiện tại không nói cho ngươi biết, sau này hãy nói. Thái sử không nói, còn quá sớm để nói với ngươi. Kỳ thật chuyện này cũng chưa chắc có lợi cho phát triển của ngươi. Tốt rồi, hiện tại ngươi đã gia nhập môn hạ của ta, trở thành đệ tử thứ 31 của ta. Thái sử không ngồi thẳng người, kiếm môn chính là đại giáo vô đại, cũng có một số quy củ, ngươi nhất định phải tuân thủ. Điều thứ nhất trong giới luật bổn môn, không được khi sư diệt tổ. Điều thứ hai, không được kết giao ma đạo. Điều thứ ba, không được giết hại đồng môn. Điều thứ tư, không được lạm sát kẻ vô tội. Điều thứ năm, không được phản bội sư môn. Kỳ thật trong những điều này, điều thứ nhất, điều thứ tư, điều thứ năm, ngươi nhất định phải tuân thủ đấy. Còn điều thứ hai, điều thứ ba đều là vô nghĩa. Kết giao ma đạo là từ ngũ đại cổ văn minh định, không chừng ngày nào đó kiếm môn chúng ta sẽ trở thành ma đạo. Không được giết hại đồng môn càng vô nghĩa, kiếm môn lớn như vậy, đủ loại nhân vật tầng tầng lớp lớp, người không hại người nói không chừng sẽ có người hại ngươi. Chỉ cần có lý do chính đáng, là người khác hãm hại ngươi trước, ngươi giết hại đồng môn hay như thế nào, ta cho ngươi lựa chọn. Chương 673, kiếm là thiên địa là kiếm. Khi thái sử không nói chuyện, vô cùng khí phách, cần giết thì cứ giết. Chỉ cần ngươi không sai, ta sẽ cho ngươi chỗ dựa. Sư phụ như vậy quả thật rất kỳ lạ. Sau này ngươi theo ta tu hành, xem pháp lực của ngươi có vẻ thấp, nhưng cũng khó trách, dù sao ngươi cũng xuất thân ở tiểu quốc ngoại vực, pháp lực cao mới kỳ quái. Thái sử không thản nhiên nói, xem ra sau này ngươi phải tu hành pháp lực nhiều hơn nữa. Đúng rồi, kiếm thuật của ngươi như thế nào? Theo tư liệu nói kiếm thuật của ngươi rất khá. Thái sử không cười nói, nếu không, thầy trò chúng ta giao thủ xem thế nào. Yên tâm, ta sẽ không sử xuất nhiều kiếm thuật đâu. Mặc dù thái sử không cũng biết một số tư liệu về Lục Nguyên, nhưng cũng chỉ có như vậy mà thôi. Hắn không đi nghiên cứu tỉ mỉ tư liệu của Lục Nguyên, chỉ là nhìn thấy người của môn phái Yến Thương Thiên liền thu vào cửa. Người có thể tiến vào Trung ương Thiên Triều, thiên phú cũng không tệ. Yến Thương Thiên là đệ tử đắc ý nhất của hắn, không có người nào sánh bằng. Chính vì điều này mà hắn quyết định thu nhận Lục Nguyên. Hiện tại hắn cũng xem cảnh giới của Lục Nguyên như thế nào. Tiểu gia hỏa này có lẽ ở cảnh giới kiếm hầu, hoặc là kiếm vương, bằng không cũng không được mọi người công nhận là kiếm thuật không tệ. Cũng được, Lục Nguyên gật đầu, giao thủ với kiếm thủ lợi hại không khỏi khiến hắn phấn chấn. Này, thái sử, nghe nói ngươi mới thu nhận một đồ đệ không tồi, đánh cược thắng được kiếm chi tình, người mới đến từ ngoại vực, còn có thể trong 12 canh giờ phá tan cửa thứ 6. Một tiếng cười cởi mở vang lên, một lão giả gầy gò đi đến, khi lão giả này bước đi, tựa hồ thiên địa cũng bị hắn chấn động, đây là một vị chí tôn họ Hạ Hầu tên là Hạ Hầu Thương, một trong 9 đại chí tôn của kiếm môn, thu nhận đồ đệ cũng không mời ta uống rượu, thật là quá đáng, vị chí tôn họ Hạ Hầu tiến vào đánh giá Lục Nguyên. Thái sử không cười nói, rượu bình thường tùy ngươi uống, muốn đụng đến tam đại chí tôn tử của ta, đừng có nằm mơ, đúng rồi, ngươi đến cũng hay, ta đang muốn xem kiếm thuật của tên đệ tử mới thu nhận này. Ngươi ở bên cạnh nhìn xem, tùy tiện chỉ điểm vài câu, có lẽ đủ cho tiểu gia hỏa này hưởng thụ. Hạ Hầu Thương và Thái sử không có quan hệ rất tốt. Nghe vậy gật đầu nói, cũng được, ta cũng có chút hứng thú với tên đệ tử này của ngươi. Mặc dù kiếm chi tình chỉ dựa vào uy danh rác rưởi của ca ca kiếm chi tử của hắn, nhưng kiếm chi tử rõ ràng có chỉ điểm cho kiếm chi tình. Vậy mà hắn có thể thắng được kiếm chi tình, không tệ, không tệ. Thái sử không ngồi trên ghế, tay đè lên chuôi kiếm. Đây là kiếm tiên, ta quên mất, kiếm tiên quá sắc bén, nhưng ta sẽ khống chế nó giống như linh kiếm bình thường. Hiện tại ngươi cứ tiến hành tấn công ta, nếu có thể ép ta động một bước, coi như ngươi thành công. Đồ Nhi, để ta xem kiếm thuật của ngươi như thế nào, là kiếm hầu hay là kiếm vương? Đồ Nhi đến từ ngoại vực, núi Không Chi, tòa ông điện này được mệnh danh là Càn Khôn Cung, kỳ thật cung điện của chí tôn khác được mệnh danh là Càn Khôn Cung. Có thể vì khí phách của hai chữ Càn Khôn, nhưng vị chí tôn Thái sử không sở dĩ được mệnh danh. Có thể vì trong lúc say nói ra những lời đại càn khôn. Thái sử không ngồi trước mặt, tay đè lên chuôi kiếm. Đồ Nhi, để ta xem kiếm thuật của ngươi như thế nào. Trận đấu này chỉ đơn thuần đấu kiếm. Vậy sao? Được. Lục Nguyên gật đầu, cũng không khách khí. Sau khi thi hành kiếm lễ, kiếm lập tức khởi phát, khí thế hùng hồn, một kiếm như điện. Thái sử không mỉm cười. Một kiếm này cũng không tệ lắm, nhưng dựa vào một kiếm này muốn bức ta di động một bước là chuyện không thể nào. Hắn cũng hoàn toàn không thèm để ý. Tay trái cầm bình rượu, uống một ngụm, tay phải rút kiếm tiên của hắn. Kiếm tiên ra khỏi vỏ liền có hào quang lấp lánh, đánh úp về hướng Dưỡng Ngô kiếm của Lục Nguyên. Trường kiếm của hai người đối kích trên không trung, lập tức phong bế công kích của Lục Nguyên. Thái sử không thầm nghĩ trong lòng, đúng lúc này, chỉ cảm thấy trường kiếm của Lục Nguyên trong tích tắc song kiếm chạm vào nhau. Căn bản không đợi kiếm đến công kích, mượn lực phản kích, thay đổi phương hướng của kiếm, đồng thời tốc độ tấn công của kiếm càng nhanh hơn. Trong giây phút song kiếm chạm kích, có thể mượn lực phản kích cực kỳ yếu ớt thay đổi phương hướng. Đánh ngược lại mình, kiếm thuật không tệ, nhưng muốn công kích ta thì không thể nào. Thái sử không thầm nghĩ, kiếm tiên trong tay tựa hồ cũng không thể quay lại, song kiếm của hai người lạo một lần nữa chạm nhau. Chính lúc này, Dưỡng Ngô kiếm của Lục Nguyên đột nhiên biến thành 10 cây. Đây là ảo ảnh, Thái sử không lập tức tìm được chân thân của kiếm, nghênh đón, lần thứ nhất còn có thể nói là sơ suất, lần này Thái sử không cuối cùng cũng phải dùng đến 5 thành chú ý. Kiếm và kiếm công kích trên hư không, kiếm của Lục Nguyên bay lên, kiếm của Thái sử không cũng bay lên, kiếm của Lục Nguyên tiến lên, Thái sử không chạm kích thân kiếm của Lục Nguyên, Thái sử không chuyển thủ thành công, công kích ác liệt, Lục Nguyên phá giải, chỉ trong chốc lát, hai người ít nhất đánh ra hơn 1000 kiếm kích, đây mới là hai người chính thức ra tay, thật sự là kiếm thuật lợi hại. Trong lòng Thái sử không có chút vui mừng, không ngờ kiếm thuật của tên đệ tử mới thu nhận lại tốt như vậy, nhưng muốn mình di động một bước có thể không dễ dàng. Nhìn thấy mũi kiếm của Lục Nguyên trực chỉ hướng trước ngực Thái sử không, Thái sử không cuối cùng cũng toàn lực chú ý, lấy ra kiếm thuật chính thức, trong lúc nhất thời kiếm pháp của hắn thay đổi, trong nháy mắt, kiếm của hắn tựa hồ biến mất, xuất hiện trước mặt Lục Nguyên là những ngôi sao, vô số ngôi sao nhấp nháy trên hư không, một ngôi sao cực nhanh đánh úp lại. Lục Nguyên dùng mũi kiếm ngăn cản, đây là cách giảm bớt lực pháp, nhưng cho dù như vậy cũng cảm thấy cánh tay tê dần. Lực đạo thật khủng khiếp, lúc này trên hư không lại xuất hiện Cửu Tinh Liên Châu, thẳng hướng Lục Nguyên, đây kỳ thật chính là một loại kiếm pháp ngôi sao trong tuyệt học cực cao của kiếm. Kiếm hóa ngôi sao, loại kiếm hóa ngôi sao này không hoàn toàn là huyền cảnh. Nếu thật sự đạt tới cảnh giới cực cao, có thể chính thức kiếm hóa ngôi sao, một người khống chế vô số ngôi sao giống như kiếm công kích địch nhân. Loại kiếm pháp ngôi sao này chính là kiếm pháp của Thiên Phát Sát Cơ. Loại kiếm pháp này nhẹ nhàng trước công kích, một khi công kích đến người mới hiển thị rõ sự đáng sợ. Hơn nữa có thể dẫn động rất nhiều ngôi sao, cái gì là Bắc Đầu Thất Tinh, Nam Đầu Thất Tinh, Cửu Tinh Liên Châu, thậm chí có tuyệt học cao nhất, một kiếm trong ngôi sao 365 chu thiên đánh ra. Đó mới là ảo diệu chí cao, loại kiếm pháp này, tiểu thành, kiếm chính là ngôi sao chính là kiếm, đại thành, kiếm là thiên địa là kiếm, một trong kiếm pháp của kiếm tam đại trấn phái, hơn nữa căn cứ vào công pháp của kỷ nguyên, nhưng đại thành cảnh giới của loại công pháp này, sớm đã không có ai có thể luyện thành, hiện tại số lượng người có thể tu kiếm thành cảnh giới tiểu thành đều rất ít. Chương 674, kiếm là thiên địa là kiếm, Thái sử không cũng sử dụng bản lĩnh thật sự của mình. Hắn hiện tại đã phát hiện kiếm thuật của Lục Nguyên mạnh ngoài dự liệu, có lẽ đạt tới đỉnh phong của cảnh giới kiếm vương, hắn làm sao có thể lùi nửa bước, chuyện trò giỏi hơn thầy là chuyện tốt, nhưng bị đồ đệ mới thu nhận ngày đầu tiên bức lui cũng không phải chuyện gì đáng tự hào. Một trong kiếm tam đại bí kiếm, quả nhiên là kiếm pháp cực kỳ đáng sợ. Lục Nguyên cảm giác tất cả kiếm pháp mà mình học được ngoài Trung ương Thiên Triều, bất luận là loại kiếm pháp nào đều không khủng bố như vậy. Phong Vân 108 kiếm, Cuồng Phong Khoái kiếm, Chiêu Dương Nhất Khí kiếm, đều có chút cảm giác vô lực, kiếm pháp trấn phái của Trung ương Thiên Triều quả nhiên không đơn giản. Sau khi liên tục thay đổi mấy chục loại kiếm pháp, phát hiện vẫn không địch lại loại kiếm pháp cổ quái đáng sợ này. Không có cách nào, Lục Nguyên lại sử dụng luân hồi trong thập đại tiết tác, vạn vật thế gian, bất luận là sinh linh hay không phải sinh linh, bất luận là người hay núi đá, hay là ngôi sao, đã ở trong luân hồi, bởi vì bản thân ngôi sao cũng sẽ hủy diệt và tái sinh. Hắn vừa dùng lực luân hồi, các ngôi sao xung quanh trong nháy mắt hỗn loạn, Thái Sử Không căn bản cũng không ngờ kiếm pháp ngôi sao sẽ bị phá giải. Hắn phản ứng cũng nhanh, nhưng kiếm của Lục Nguyên còn nhanh hơn, hắn không tự chủ được lùi lại, 1 bước, 2 bước, 3 bước, 7 bước, khi lùi lại 7 bước, hắn mới ngưng được thế đi, đánh tan lực luân hồi, lúc này kiếm của hắn đã địch lại thế tấn công của kiếm Lục Nguyên. Thái Sử Không ngây người, vị trí tôn Hạ Hầu Thương đứng bên cạnh cũng ngây người. Hai vị trí tôn đều biết rõ, Thái Sử Không đã sử xuất 10 thành kiếm thuật, ngay cả kiếm pháp ngôi sao cũng toàn lực làm ra, dưới tình huống như vậy còn bị tên đệ tử mới thu nhận bước lui 7 bước. Ngay từ đầu hắn đã nói chỉ cần Lục Nguyên bước lui 1 bước là thắng, mà bây giờ đã liên tiếp bước lui 7 bước, tên đệ tử mới thu nhận này có kiếm thuật thật sự cao minh. Hơn nữa vừa rồi hắn dùng cái gì, Thái Sử Không và Hạ Hầu Thương đều là một trong cửu đại chí tôn. Nhãn lực cao minh như thế nào, rất nhanh nhận ra được, cái này rất có thể là một loại thiết tác, căn cứ vào tư liệu, Lục Nguyên mới chỉ 30-40 tuổi, vậy mà hắn đã biết thiết tác, nếu như vậy, cũng quá khoa trương rồi. Kiếm Hoàng, tên đệ tử mới thu nhận này căn bản không phải kiếm hầu, cũng không phải kiếm vương gì cả, mà là kiếm hoàng, hơn nữa nhìn thủ đoạn thuần thục của hắn, căn bản không giống mới lên kiếm hoàng, có lẽ đạt đến kiếm hoàng một thời gian rồi. Thái Sử Không cảm giác lần này mình thật sự đã bị hù dọa. Một kiếm hoàng hơn 30 tuổi, mình đã thu nhận một tên đệ tử thế nào chứ? Hạ Hầu Thương ở bên cạnh cũng vô cùng hâm mộ đố kỵ. Một kiếm hoàng hơn 30 tuổi, lần này lão gia hỏa Thái Sử Không đã thu nhận được một tên đệ tử không tệ. Nhưng nghĩ đến Thái Sử Không mấy ngàn năm nay không có đệ tử nào xuất sắc, hiện tại rốt cuộc đã tìm được một tên, như vậy cũng công bằng. Được, Lục Nguyên, ta đúng là xem thường ngươi, kiếm hoàng cảnh giới, không ngờ ngươi lại có cảnh giới kiếm hoàng, đây là luân hồi trong thập đại tiết tác sao? Lục Nguyên gật đầu, đây là loại kiếm pháp do Yến Tổ sư sáng chế khi ở Tấn Quốc. Là Thương Thiên sao? Thái Sử Không chắp tay sau lưng, thiên phú của Yến Thương Thiên mạnh hơn vi sư, đáng tiếc vi sư năm đó không bảo vệ hắn, khiến hắn không thể ở lại Trung ương Thiên Triều, cuối cùng hắn cũng đã ngộ ra luân hồi trong thập đại tiết tác.